mailbag.
Tien writes, with Warner Brothers gearing up to launch their DC cinematic continuity, many have accused them of rushing to catch up to Marvel's successful cinematic universe. Lest we forget, while Marvel was busy establishing the MCU, WB was juggling the Lord of the Rings and Hobbit trilogies, the Dark Knight trilogy, the 300 films, V for Vendetta, and countless other good to great movies. So between the two studios, which is truly ahead of the other?
Well, I mean, it all depends on what you're comparing. If you're comparing your comic book universe, then everybody saying that Warner Brothers is playing catch up right now to Marvel is completely accurate. Now, if you want to bring in other things like a Lord of the Rings epic or other types of epics as well, well, then you can, if you want to do that, you're starting a slippery slope, because at some point then you can just go, yeah, well, Disney was doing, Steamboat Willie and was doing Mary Poppins, and so who's playing catch up with who? I mean, then it becomes a never ending. Create the parameters of what the discussion is. Who is catching up to whose comic book cinematic universe? And if that's the question, then there's no doubt. Look, I'm super looking forward to Batman vs. Superman. Everybody knows that. I'm losing my mind over it. But Warner Brothers right now is playing catch up to Marvel, which is far ahead at the moment. Now, I've made the argument before. I'll say it again. No matter how far behind Warner Brothers is right now and DC is right now to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, because of how many films they put out, how many good quality films they put out, all that kind of stuff, I'm telling you, I stand by this. If Batman vs. Superman, which is, I'm going to say, the most highly anticipated comic book movie of all time. I've never looked forward to a comic book movie more than I've looked forward to Batman vs. Superman. If this movie is great, Warner Brothers catches up with one film. As far as if you go out to the general audience now and say, are you looking forward to the next Warner Brothers DC movie now? Or are you looking forward more to the next Marvel? I think it's going to be almost 50-50 if Batman versus Superman knocks it out of the park. I still believe that. So, yeah, Warner Brothers is still playing catch up to Marvel. At least that's how I interpret it. Christian, how do you see it?
I think as far as the comic book universe, I mean, absolutely. I mean, it's just a matter of got more mileage. You know, it's like, and I understand what you're saying with if Batman and Superman hits, the excitement level is going to be there for just
then the average moviegoer will be just as much looking forward to the next DC movie as
but they're still going to have
Marvel.
catch up as far as connecting the whole universe together.
Oh, sure, yeah, absolutely.
Because it's really there's no reason to have a discussion about it, because it's just like I said, it's mileage. Now, however, if you wanted to take a time period and say, okay, look, let's go over the last five years on who's winning between, we'd say, the studios, Disney or Warner Brothers. It's a tough fight. Because don't forget about movies like Argo. Don't forget about all these movies. Like Warner Brothers chimes out those Oscars, and that's it's a big thing in our business.
And if we're broadening the discussion to all movies,
if we're talking about a studio fight,
right?
Talking about a studio fight, then it's a different conversation.
Yes,
but
it is.
I don't think that there's really Let's talk about the cinematic universe in a year. Or 2 years, because then we'll have Suicide Squad and Wonder Woman, and we'll see
much different discussion then.
Because you can compare the first year,
right,
and you can say, what did the DC cinematic universe do in that first year? What did the Marvel Cinematic Universe? By the time we got to Justice League, do we care more about the characters in the universe more than we did before we got to the first Avengers? It's a fun conversation to have in a year to 2 to 3 years from now.
I'd say let's broaden it up and say, if Marvel's not even in their first decade of the cinematic universe, and Warner Brothers has been making superhero films successfully since, let's just say, 1978, Superman the movie.
Right.
So they have a string of superhero films that were successful for the last 4 or 5 decades. You have Superman, Superman 2, you have Batman, Batman Returns. We won't talk about the other sequels of those films, but at least those 4 movies alone.
Green Lantern.
Well, no, I'm just talking about like from 3 decades ago. So we're talking about they've already established themselves as, hey, we're the guys who make these superhero films. Marvel had a bunch of horrible films, before Disney came along and before Marvel got a lot of their characters.
Marvel wasn't really a studio.
They were in a studio, right?
They weren't in a studio.
Yeah.
So their first actual studio film was Iron Man and the Hulk.
Right.
The Marvel proper cinematic universe, and that was 2007 or 2008, I think.
Yeah, I think Iron Man 1 was 2008.
Yeah, so we're not even in a decade of Marvel cinematic universes, and we've already got questions like who's going to win. So I think it's like a little early. Like, yeah, we have bombs like you have the Fantastic Four, you also have Green Lantern. You have you have misfires, like you have the Punisher, and you have Superman Returns. You have on both sides, you have like, hey, we've got our franchise. No, you don't. You know, nobody liked it, or it didn't work.
But isn't that a little different though, because the cinematic universe hadn't really been established yet?
It is different, but all I'm saying is in the context of time.
Sure.
So within the context of time, you know, Superman Returns and Green Lantern were misfires and didn't start their cinematic universe, which I think they were hoping would, to follow suit with Iron Man and Hulk and Captain America and Thor, and then Avengers. And then once Avengers hit, that's when Warner Brothers was like, we got to get on this. Man of Steel was already in production. It was already shot. They delayed it a year and reformed their ideas as to how they can reverse engineer it. So that's really what we're talking about, is next year is the big fight, the big battle. As you're right.
Yeah.
If Batman v Superman doesn't knock it out of the park, there's going to be problems.
Yeah.
And there's going to be big
problems.
problems. So, I mean, it has to just be good. I mean, that's really all any fan of Batman or Superman and these two iconic characters meeting up in a giant big budget film, it just has to be good to satisfy real hardcore fans. We don't want it to just be good. We want it to be amazing. We want it to be everything we've always wanted. And I think with people like Zack Snyder, who's already a big comic book fan and has already proven himself with his amazing visual stylings, I think we're going to get something really special. So is it going to be the film that ties everything together? I don't know, but I think it's going to be the film that pops it off.
Guys, don't worry about it. I heard that Warner Brothers executives gave the Warner Brothers movie a big standing ovation.
My joke.
No need to worry, everybody.
Relax. Yeah, I heard Zack Snyder gave it a standing O, and he watched it in his computer at his home.
Pretty excited about it.
Yeah.